Hello again, YouTube. It's, I guess, happy late night, early morning, whenever I get around to posting this, but it is late. And I was up, the Leafs are on the road playing in Vancouver tonight, so I was up late watching the game, and I got an idea about a new series of videos that I thought I would touch on, since it's kind of something I've done in my past that's kind of come back, is reading comics. As a kid, I read a fair amount of comics. I don't have a ton, but I did enjoy them very much, both the stories and especially the artwork, especially from my favorite franchises, to kind of expand them out from the cartoons and the movies and the toy lines and stuff like that. So, unfortunately for myself, I never bought comics from series that ended up being very valuable. Like, I don't have any Spider-Man #1s or X-Men's, I don't have comics like that. My main area of focus were my favorite TV shows and toy lines, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, and the Ninja Turtles were kind of the big three for me. So I've been picking away at them, completing those series from when I was a kid over the last number of years. I'm still pretty far away on most of them, but I pick up the odd issue when I can, here and there. And as I've been doing that, I thought, you know what, I'm trying to complete these collections and I'm a long way off, and I thought, well, I may as well start collecting some new series so that I can actually collect something from the start, from ground zero, and know that I'm going to continue with it and have a full set of these comics once the series is done, right? So, and again, I've concentrated on those three main kind of series, as well as some other ones here and there, but for the most part, it's going to be those three kind of franchises that will be represented here. So I do have the kind of the latest batch that I've gotten. This first one here, it's actually a free comic that the current Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles regular series is coming up on their 100th issue, so it's kind of a milestone. So they released this free one-shot that kind of summarizes this series' events kind of really quickly into where they've gotten now. Like, it touches on the Mighty Mutanimals, and Metalhead is involved, and Splinter and Shredder's battle, of course, and Shredder's death, and how Karai came to want to lead the Foot after his death, but Splinter also wanted to do it, so they kind of came at odds, and it was basically the city at war between these two factions, as they both tried to control the Foot Clan. So this is just kind of glosses over the entire story arc up to this point in preparation for that 100th episode, or 100th issue, which I'm assuming is going to be out sometime in December or January. I haven't really checked, but yeah, so it was a nice little freebie that was a cool little read, and kind of gave me on some backstory on this current series, because I think I only got on board on this one like kind of in the late 80s, so there's a whole bunch of it that I don't know. So it was nice to kind of see that the early stuff that went on. The next one is issue 19 of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Urban Legends series. I've only got number 17 before this. Again, I kind of picked up, not as late as on that one I just talked about, but on this Urban Legends series, I haven't got the start of it either. But in this one, it's a little bizarre. There are these weird stories, and in this one, it's like Donatello's being held by this agency for being some sort of freak. He's got all this technology attached to him. Raphael is wearing Shredder's armor and wants to take over the Foot Clan, and Splinter's pissed off at him for that, because he's doing it for not the right reasons. Because Raph, he's all full of rage and revenge, right? And then Mikey and Leo, in the meanwhile, are off visiting Leatherhead, who they discover is hiding an Utrom in this little tank, and the Utrom gets them to start some device that kind of teleports Mikey away, and when he comes back, he's got a Triceraton with him, so there's a whole bunch of Triceratons let loose in the city, and they have to fight them off. So kind of a bizarre little story that, because I hadn't seen, again, most of what came before it, I'm not sure exactly how everything got to this point, but it's nice to see different stories, because a lot of times I find that these franchises get into a groove of, okay, this is the story and this is how it always goes and always goes. So it's kind of neat to see some different kind of realities almost on how things could have gone. And a lot of times in comics they're like dark and kind of gritty and not as kind of glossy as the original series and the cartoons, right? So that was pretty cool. The series I'm arguably most jacked about is the G.I. Joe A Real American Hero series. This is issue 268, I believe. Yeah. And again, I only got in on this recently, so I have maybe starting at 255 or something like that. I'm going to go back and try and pick away at the odd one when I look at the racks and see if there's any more I can add. But in this particular issue, it's pretty short and sweet in terms of what happens story-wise. Dr. Mindbender and Cobra Commander have kidnapped a Joe named Sean Collins, who they believe to be the original Snake Eyes, and they want to twist him and warp him to become the ultimate ninja warrior for Cobra. And so they have captured him, and all this issue is him, Sean Collins, being transferred by air to Cobra's base. And of course, Snake Eyes being Snake Eyes, we all know you can't keep him down, so he gets loose inside one of the HISS tanks that's being transported by air and causes all sorts of mayhem. And as his Joe comrades come to support him and set him free, a big aerial battle erupts, and there's Sky Strikers, there's Cobra Ravens, there's my favorite, the Cobra Rattler, HISS tanks, and all sorts of great characters involved. So when Snake Eyes is involved, it's going to be awesome. So it's just one big kind of air battle, the whole issue. That's all it is. So it was a really fast read. It was lots of action, lots of great artwork, and I think G.I. Joe is my favorite comic series. Like when I was growing up, that was the one I focused on most above Transformers and the Turtles. I liked them, all three of them, a lot, but G.I. Joe was kind of the one to me that was just like, this is the one. So it's awesome to start reading these new ones again. Now this one is the first issue in a new G.I. Joe storyline that sees Cobra take the advantage. As it opens up, it's in Chicago, and Duke is kind of running through the streets being chased by Cobra thugs, and he eventually gets caught, and I think it's Major Blood puts a bullet through his head and kills Duke. And this kind of smuggler kid notices this happen and is shocked, and he picks up a USB stick or something like that with some intel on it that Duke was trying to get back to the Joes. And Scarlet notices this, and later on she tracks this guy down who she nicknames Tiger because he's got this tiger logo on his jacket. And she tells him to stay out of it. She takes the intel from him, and she goes back to Joe headquarters and does what she has to do. And later on they plan this secret mission to a Cobra facility that they didn't realize was a Cobra facility. And this Tiger guy gets to it first and causes a wrinkle in their plans, and all of a sudden Cobra descends on them, and they gotta fight for their lives to get out of there. And when they take this Tiger fellow back to their base, he becomes the latest Joe recruit because they're down numbers, and they need more bodies. So, and that's kind of where this one leaves off, and actually it leaves off on kind of a sour note when the Joes are all asked to stand down because they have surrendered and Cobra has officially won the war. So that's kind of how this one cliffhangs on. So pretty neat story about Cobra winning the war and what would happen if, right? So I can't wait to see. I don't know if this is just going to be a short series, like a 4 or 5, 6 issue series, or if it's going to be a longer one. Sorry, like I said, it's early. But I'm really interested to see kind of where this story goes and what happens, and if the Joes recover or if it's just kind of doom and gloom and we see Cobra take over in the end for good, right? Next up is issue 14 in Transformers: A Bold New Era. I've got all of the ones that came before this. I got in on this one right from Ground Zero, and it's awesome. It's kind of like a re-envisioning of the early days of Cybertron and how everything went awry on Cybertron. Um, it's a peaceful time. There hasn't been a murder in many cycles, I guess they're called. And suddenly that peace is shattered, though, and it's a charge of Bumblebees who is murdered, and it's thrown him into a complete funk. And he ends up being swayed to join the Ascenticons, who are basically like the Decepticons, who are being kind of led by Megatron's Soundwave, that little group. And at the same time, I guess they're not really the Autobots yet, but they're trying to ferret out who these Ascenticons are and set things to rights. So that's kind of how the story has kind of started and up to this point. And then in this issue 14, there's a group of Ascenticon wannabes holed up in this facility, and they're wreaking all sorts of havoc. And they're led by Ruckus, I think it is. And so Sideswipe, Springer, Elita 1, they're dispatched to try and take care of these guys. And in the meantime, Prowl and a couple of his buddies are off on a kind of intel mission trying to figure out where this Ascenticon uprising is coming from and what they can do to try and stop it. So that's it's kind of a not a slow moving series, but there's lots of, the action is kind of in little fits and starts in the series because there's so much story going on in terms of, you know, who's picking what sides and why, and it's kind of, because it started off in a time of relative peace. It's kind of a slow build to, I think, what is going to happen here. So I can't wait to see what happens on this one either. I don't know. This is going to be a continuing series. I don't know how many they've got in store for it, but they're already up to issue 14, so I hope they keep cranking them out. The last one is in that same A Bold New Era Transformers line. Oh my god, I'm too old for this. It is issue 3, of Transformers Galaxies. And this one has focused on the Constructicons, who as a kid, I loved all of the original Autobots, like all the cars, of course, Optimus Prime, but Wheeljack, Sunstreaker, Sideswipe, Trailbreaker, did I say Wheeljack? Mirage, Ironhide, and Ratchet. I loved all the Autobots, but when the Constructicons came on the scene on the Decepticon side of things, and they became that kind of original combiner robot, I was just blown away as a kid. I was like, oh my god, I want those toys. I want to see more Constructicons in the cartoon. These things are awesome, right? So, and if you don't know Transformers well, or know the Constructicons in particular, they are 6 construction machines. There's a dump truck, a bulldozer, a loader, and a few other, crane, and a cement truck, and an excavator, and they can combine all 6 of them to form this massive robot named Devastator, who's just a raging freak of an animal, and he just causes so much destruction, which is funny because they like to build stuff when they're separated and doing their thing, right? So in this one, Wheeljack and another Transformer named Termagax, who I'm not familiar with, are, they have discovered a way, a device that will enable a bunch of robots to combine and form a robot, and that is what they gift to these Constructicons, and they try to kind of coach them through working together and becoming one in this robot, because it's after the war in this timeline, and they're trying to rebuild Iacon City, and having the Constructicons being able to form this giant robot is just going to make the progress so much easier. However, when they do transform and form Devastator, there's some sort of consciousness pulling at them that's trying to kind of dragging them into the dark and wanting them to cause mayhem rather than to construct. And Wheeljack gets a whiff of this, and he just wants the whole project canceled. He sees no good coming from it, whereas Termagax is on the other side. You know, how do you progress if you don't go through these situations and solve problems and whatever. So you got these two sides going on, and along the way, the Constructicons are approached by the Insecticons, and who are kind of seen as these kind of vulture-y leeches, eating the corpses of fellow Transformers, and nobody, they're unsavory to everybody, and nobody wants anything to do with them. And they approach the Constructicons and say, you guys have a choice to do whatever you want. You don't have to be the puppets to these guys and just build and never get a break. And so that kind of seed of doubt's planted in their mind. And at the end of this issue, it's decided that the Constructicons are going to be sent away from Cybertron to another planet that is rich in energon, and they're going to build an energon kind of mining station or transfer station or something like that, because getting energy is more of a priority than rebuilding Iacon at that point. So as this issue ends, they're kind of being shuttled off to this new planet. So that's kind of where it cliffhangs on. And I think there's only one more issue in this miniseries, so everything should come to a head with issue 4 next month. And I can't wait to see where that all ends as well. So that is my, it was a pretty light comic month, actually. Usually I have a few more issues than that. But I usually buy my comics at the start of each month, so I hope to get through them by mid-month and post kind of a monthly, mid-month comic review of what I've kind of been up to and what I've read. So I just thought that would be something new and different and interesting. Yeah, I guess in terms of comics, until mid-January, I bid you adieu.